Almost going live, y'all. I just got to get my correct glasses on so it hides the bags under my eyes. Boom. Let's go. Happy another new podcast. Michael Hicks coming to you live from Framing New Heights. I'm their host with the most. And just want to say thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm super excited to chat with you about today's topic. I want to dive in right away from a word from our sponsors, and it's actually my own sponsor. Are you ready to unlock your true full potential, y'all, and start living a life on your terms? And at Live to Thrive, we are dedicated in helping you thrive in all areas of your life, whether it's building a stronger mindset, improving your relationships, or just achieving particular personal goals. Our proven coaching framework is designed to empower high achievers like yourself to break through those barriers, learn how to get through those walls, overcome procrastination, and create a lasting success for your career, your relationship, and ideally for yourself. As a life coach and relationship expert, I will help you gain clarity, develop powerful habits, and connect more deeply with people who matter the most. Whether you're looking for personal growth or to strengthen your relationships, the Live to Thrive Mindset Coaching Program is here to guide you in every single step of the way. So start thriving the life you want to live now. You can go to www.liv2thrive.com to book your free consultation. So let's begin to thrive together. So apply today at live2thrive.com. Hey, you can't sleep? Got the aches and pains? Well, you got to check out CBD Full Spectrum CBD oil. It's Amish tested. It's proven. If you got those aches and pains, you got struggling with sleep, now is the perfect time to take advantage of that. I have partnered up with Elite Nutrition, and they are offering 50% off at checkout if you type in New Heights, all cap locks, New Heights, and that promo code New Heights at envitamins.com. All right, let's dive in, y'all. I'm excited about this topic. Since it's October, I was like, well, what can I talk about that is in the month of October? And I love October because it's like this spooky transitional time. It's really an opportunity where we start with, well, for me personally, it's my daughter's birthday, Halloween, Thanksgiving, which I love, which I'll do a podcast on that starting in episode or season 3, the grateful things. And then it transforms and morphs into Christmas. And then the new year, right? The new you, exciting times, exciting. Today's topic covers Michael Hicks' 5 scariest moments, from childhood fears to life-changing experiences. So, are you guys ready? Are you ready to unlock and hear this, I think, pretty cool episode? I'm super excited about it, and I'm going to jump right in and go into it. So here's what I want to say. Fear. I actually just had a journey call with a potential client this past Saturday, and one of the biggest things I talk about, either you live in faith or you live in fear. Fear, it's something we all experience in all different ways, right? Whether it's finances, whether it's relationships, whether it's the scary opportunity to take and you don't know, whether it's a leap of faith from working at a job that you were there for 16 years and you want to embark on something new. Fear is something we all experience in different ways. It could be a childhood nightmare, maybe a life-altering event. And I talked about many of these things on the story of Michael Hicks. If you want to go back and check that podcast out, that's an earlier episode. But I actually share about my life-altering events. However, fear, these moments shape us in ways we often do not realize. And in today's episode, I really want to begin sharing the 5 scariest moments in my life from childhood encounters with shadows of realities of adulthood. Got me so far? And these experiences have really left a lasting impact and taught me the lessons of resilience. And I might even go in a little bit more than just 5, but I kind of labeled that as just a sounding board. So let's dive into it, right? So, with a moment from my early childhood that actually still lingers in my mind, I remember this distinctively. So the first story that I want to share is the boogeyman. The boogeyman, right? Um, my mom would often talk to me and say to me, Michael, if she told me about this boogeyman, and I didn't know what the heck a boogeyman was. The Nightmare Before Christmas wasn't out yet, which I love, by the way. I think that's one of the coolest Halloween traditional movies, and we watched that in the Hicks household. But the boogeyman, and I can distinctly remember my mom would always say, well, if you don't behave, the boogeyman will come and get you. And I didn't know what the boogeyman was. So your mind kind of goes in different places and has this image of what it is. So I was just a kid, probably, I would have to say, in between the ages of maybe 7 and 9. My notes said 6, but I think in between the ages of 7 and 9. Yeah, my mom, like I said, would always warn me about the boogeyman, especially if I misbehaved. And like any other child, like those words really stuck with me. And I was a mama's boy. I did not have a father growing up. Many of you probably heard that in my story. Again, if you haven't had a chance, please go back. A lot of the stuff that I will talk about was in my story that I shared. And so didn't have a father really growing up. I had a stepdad later on in life that really was just there. And I talk about that in my actual story. However, I can remember I would always sleep in my mom's bed. I would sleep in my mom's bed. There's a period of time where I would sleep in my mom's bed, right? And I remember this distinctive night. And my mom was out in the living room. So just to kind of give you the framework and idea of where the visualization. So the bedroom was here. And then immediately when you left the bedroom, the living room was right there. So mom was watching TV. I remember distinctively laying in bed, and then my mom would have this closet towards the end of the room. Now, the closet never had a door. You know what I mean? Some have curtains, never had a door. This one had no door. And I distinctively remember just laying there in bed, in my mom's bed, and just looking and seeing. And to this day, this is still 100% accuracy. Seeing a shadow-like figure. And the shadow figure was it was like a shadow. It was the best way I can describe this. It was a shadow in maybe the figure of a person, but it was slowly moving towards me. And it was literally, now I don't know if I was sleeping. I don't remember sleeping. I remember laying there. And it's literally something straight out of anyone's worst nightmare. Like you could create a scary movie on this. Did we watch a lot of scary movies? We probably even did that night. We probably watched, my mom, I remember at that age, I watched The Exorcist. Mom had no idea. I could never show any of those movies to my daughter. Caroline is still scary, and my daughter's is actually 10. That's so just full circle, right? So I remember when that image came out. Excuse me here. Where that image came out, and I was fearful. I screamed, "Mom! Mom!" Convinced that the boogeyman had come for me. He literally came for me. And that night, I realized just how real childhood fears could feel. And the lesson to be learned from that situation, looking back, reflection, I always like to give you something attainable here in my podcast, is looking back, it may have just been my imagination, simply from maybe something that I watched, something that my mom constantly talked about. I bring up that because it shows us how powerful fear is. And when it's something as simple as a shadow, fear can resemble and take many images. So the question I have for you listeners today is, what is your boogeyman? What was your particular boogeyman? What is your thing that you've had in your life that created that fear base? And for many of you, it could be something similar. It could be the boogeyman story that I just shared with you. So be mindful of where your mind goes, your imaginary mind, because it can really shift us. So that is the story of the boogeyman. I remember also, this is kind of a side topic before I get into my second story, is I think I was 9 years old and I shared this. I might have shared this on my story, but I'm going to share it today because it's a pretty personal story. And this is also one of the scariest, I would say one of the top scary movie moments. It was in that same house. I remember living above where my grandma lived. My grandma lived on the bottom, the lower. It was a 2-story home, right? So one family would live on the lower at the bottom end, and we lived upstairs. My mom and I did. We lived there for many years. And I remember being super excited. I'll never forget this. I remember being a little kid. I must have been probably 7 or 8. And we had a birthday party. And I went to bed. And my mom invited someone over. And I remember I got this cool big wheel. And this big wheel, for those of you, wasn't one of the turning one. It had the levers, right? So you could turn, you could spin out. It was super, super cool. And I remember this story very significantly because I was super excited. So my mom had people over. Well, I think she had one person over, and as I remember her having him over, I was in the bedroom, and I remember her distinctly saying, and yeah, you can smoke whatever you want. So at that time, they talked about grass. They called it grass, which was literally marijuana nowadays. So I remember, anyway, I fell asleep. So I woke up early that next morning. And mind you, mom was probably partying pretty late. I probably woke up at like 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. And I remember being so excited because I got such a cool gift and I wanted to get working on that big wheel and putting that big wheel together, right? Like, how cool is it to put that big wheel together? And I remember getting up and I was doing my very best to be quiet and putting these pieces together, and something fell. And I was like, uh-oh. I knew at that moment I was going to be in trouble. I remember my mom coming out. Now, mind you, she probably was partying till probably 3, 4 o'clock in the morning at our house. She didn't leave the house. Smoking, drinking, whatever it may have been. And she came out like with a vengeance. Now, mind you, probably hungover. I'm giving a lot of excuses here for my mom because what I'm about to share with you is a pretty scary piece. And I just remember literally, y'all, getting the shit beat out of me. I mean, I got a beating that I had never experienced in my life. One of those beatings to the point where you would be like, you know what I mean? Like you literally would be like, that's how it was. That's how it was. And I'm kind of poking fun of it because of some trauma that we all experience. But I got this beating that I'll never, ever understand why. Now, in retrospect, I understand why. My mom was hungover. She needed to get her sleep. I was up too early. That affected her. So she beat me. Really beat me. So my bed. Anyway, that was another moment in my life. And it taught me that I can't this day cannot control other people's words. Was that a traumatic experience in my life? Yes. Was it very yes. And in fact, it was the same household that I said, ironic, like weird, right? And realize I have never, will I ever, we can use our own words. It was an incredible Hulk big wheel for those home for you. And this was, again, same household, same neighborhood. We love to play cops and robbers. And I'm going to say the bird in this situation. I'll get there. You'll understand why. So we were playing outside with my friends. My friends were like, hey, come on over. And we were playing cops and robbers. And the next thing I know is, hey, my mom's not home. We got this great idea. Let's go upstairs on the 2-story house and go on the porch. We're thinking about jumping down because we're playing this cool cops and robbers game. And I think you know where I'm going with this. And we often play cops and robbers, but that day we decided to add a rooftop to it and thinking it'd be cool to jump off. And how many of you remember like the dares? Oh, I dare you to do this. I dare you to do that. Well, I remember we all went upstairs. There's like 3 or 4 of us. And now, mind you, these kids didn't go to the same school that I did. I think they were public school kids. Not that it mattered. I grew up in a private school sector my whole life. I went to a Lutheran grade school, which was kindergarten through 8th grade. That was St. Paul's Lutheran. Then I had the opportunity. I got a scholarship for athletics to play sports at Sheboygan Lutheran. I went on then to play college basketball at Concordia University. And then I went and got my administration license and sports management license at Cardinal Stritch University, which is no longer open. So anyway, moving back to the story, cops and robbers and the bird. So we decided to go upstairs. We're upstairs. Parents aren't around, right? That's another thing. Parents, I want to share this with you. Please, 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 please listen. If you're going to, no matter what the situation is, if you have kids that are going somewhere after school because of your work schedule, the question you should always ask, are their parents home? Be the parent that gets involved and knows what's going on. All right. This situation is exactly why I'm going to share this, and the reason why I share this with you, because bad things happen when parents aren't there, especially when you're a younger kid. I was probably 9 at this age, 9 or 10 years old. So I remember we're going upstairs. We're on the balcony, on the porch. I decide I'm just going to go over the edge because I'm just cool. I'm being cool. I'm being like, oh, this is cool. We're still playing cops and robbers to some degree. I don't know what that means. I think you know where I'm going with this. Out of nowhere, an enormous bird swooped down at us. Now, for a moment, I'm teasing. It wasn't a bird. I'm totally teasing. But I'm saying that to set up the story. So I'm on the edge. And again, no adults, no one there. I'm contemplating whether or not I should actually jump off because the robbers are coming or the cops are coming. I got to jump off. I was the bad guy, wasn't the bird. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, someone pushed me off. Yeah. 2 stories. 2 stories. And I wasn't I wasn't ready. I remember for the split second of panic before hitting the ground. I remember distinctively having many, still to this day, nightmares of falling because I know what it was like, the emotional impact it had on me. I do remember going home all bloody, kid carrying me. I don't even remember the kid's name, carrying me back to my mom's house. And then we went to the hospital. That's all I remember. I got concussed. I had a concussion because someone for a split second thought it was funny to push me off this porch. Now, hindsight, emotional impact, the feeling of losing control. How many of you feel like that? Man, Michael, I got to control everything in my life, especially when it's not my choice. It can be terrifying. From that moment on, y'all, it made me weary of any type of particular situation where I wasn't in charge of my own safety. I would always, now even to this day, you can even ask Amber when we go out to eat, I need to be sitting in a position where I can see everything. That had a major emotional impact on my life, just from a simple push when I was probably 9 or 10 years old off of a porch. So the lesson learned, you guys, in this situation, the lesson learned here, even though it was a small moment, it made me really realize the importance of trusting my internal instincts. Not only to my internal instincts, but not even trusting anyone, really, to be honest with you. Because the only thing I was very lucky. You know, I was an athlete most of my life. Nothing was broken, knock on wood. And the scariest thing was taking that, trusting friends to go that you were going to step out on that ledge, not getting pushed. I thought that I could trust them, but end up getting pushed, obviously, and getting concussed. Scary moment. One of my top 5 scariest moments in my lifetime. I want to bring in my next story, and I want to set the scene. So we lived, mind you, when I was a kid, we lived many different places. So we ended up moving a little bit farther away from school. I remember, man, that was a long walk. I did it many times. I walked to school. Gosh, many times. Long walk, though. It was way on the west side of the town that I grew up in, which was Sheboygan. But we were playing so where we were at, we lived in kind of like these new apartments. However, they were kind of income-based apartments. But where we lived had like an open field. There was grass. There was places like farther, like just open, right? You could build forts. It was kind of cool. So we were playing again, cops and robbers, and we're playing outside with our friends, pretending to be cops and robbers, and like we often did, right? And this is crazy, and I still remember this out of nowhere, you all. Like literally out of absolutely nowhere, this enormous bird kind of swoops down on us, like out of nowhere. And for a moment, I felt like the bird was specifically targeting me. I remember ducking and screaming like a little schoolgirl, thinking I was about to get attacked, and it probably must have been right around fall, right when the weather was changing. So it had a pretty emotional impact on me, and I was terrified as a kid, right? How many of you had that where something just unexpectedly jumps out at you? And it was the unexpected fear of nature doing something so unpredictable was something that I totally lost thought about. I totally forgot about. And I laugh to this day, but man, that was scary. You just didn't know. You're playing, you're out, literally you're pretty far away from everything. And out of nowhere, this huge bird comes and scares me. And fear. it's there again, right? And here's the thing. Fear doesn't always, y'all, it doesn't always come from obvious places. It comes from hidden places. It can show up when it's least expected. So, how are you managing that fear? Is my question to you today. Is when something is fearful, what are your steps to process you through that? Are you just forgetting it? I'll get to it later. That's a whole new different podcast that I can talk about. Oh, wow. So 5 scariest things that end up being 6. I morphed it a little bit. So it's 6 scariest things of my lifetime since it's October, and I wanted to share them with you. The next one is pretty monumental. It happened 2023 in May. This is story number 5. It was my indirect inguinal hernia operation. One of the scariest things I've ever encountered, because I had to have the ability to surrender control of me. Yes, I'm a faith-based man. However, I am also a sinner from head to toe, right? Failed miserably many times. I feel like my body, y'all, is very important to me. Going and working out is very important to me. And this was a monumental, scary time because I was turning 50, getting close to it. I think I was 49 or 50 at the time. And that scary moment, I remember this, and I'm not going to exaggerate. I remember so many things. And again, this is a little repeat of some of the things that I shared on my story. However, I remember getting prepped, right? They prep you, they sedate you, they give you these drugs. I remember, and this is just so alarming to me, is the nurse that was working with me, wonderful woman. She's taking my heart rate. And she's like, wow, you have such a low resting heart rate. And she was like baffled by it, like shocked by it. Like it was so abnormal. And she's like, well, are you an athlete? I'm like, I used to be. Just take care of my body now. I take care of it. I've done it since I was 18. I've been lifting weights, and I was a college basketball athlete for many years. I played ball until I was like probably 42. At that age, after I got done playing, I could barely walk. Still killing cats, but I could barely walk. And I was just shocked by that. So anyway, they're prepping. And while they're prepping, they told me, are you ready for this? They told me that they were going to intubate you. Do you guys know what that means? Do you know what that means? Well, I'm going to tell you. They take this tube, they put it all the way down, and now they're in control of your heart, everything. They're like, oh, don't worry, though. There's that worry word. You won't even know what happened to you. And they're right. They were right. Man, I'm going back. I'm going back, and as I go back, I get a little. It's a very scary thing because they wheel you in these cold rooms. You're on this like metal table, and then they move you over. And I was praying. I prayed for the safety of them, and I prayed that the operation went well, and I was praying for them in that moment because, man, y'all, I was scared. I was so scared. Will it go smoothly? Because it was the unknown, right? We're so scared and so fearful of the unknown. Will it go smoothly? Will the doctor do what he's supposed to do? Will he get the right side? Obviously, in this part, he probably could because you can see the opening, the hole, right? Will I wake up okay? That was another thing. And going back, I remember my last workout, I just did a row. My last workout was a row. So I got on a row machine and I rode for like 30 minutes. That was my last workout that I did. However, bringing it full circle back, I remember the anxiety I felt before going under the what is it called? Anesthesia. And the thinking about the what ifs. Do you guys have the what ifs? Do you have the case of the what ifs? Yeah, the what ifs, right? And it's so impactful and scary. And however, man, I am better than I ever was. And it started to be physical pain to the point of before, obviously, it wasn't like, it was just like this weird burning awkwardness. It was just, it did sometimes just a little bump would come up. Yeah, it was nothing really, but apparently they were like, Michael, this is a really serious operation. So the biggest thing is allowing yourself or putting your life in someone else's hands. That is very scary. It taught me a valuable lesson, though, is when you have faith in your creator, anything is possible. And for some people, you're like, well, that's just, Michael, that's not a major organ surgery. It's still a major surgery. And it's still a scary surgery, especially when you have to put it yourself in the life of someone else's hands. The experience that taught me, y'all, is all about vulnerability. Men that are listening, be vulnerable. And I can share that with you on an entire podcast, which I already have. But vulnerability is absolutely, I think, important. And because it's that surgery in itself was extremely scary. And I was not in control of my very own body, which was why it was so scary. Vulnerability is a very, very, I think, impactful thing that you can do in relationships, you can do in life with coworkers, with friends. I think it's very vital and a very beautiful thing. And men, if you can learn that particular trait, it is a beautiful, wonderful thing. All right, you guys ready for my last one? My last one was the scariest part of my life. Anybody know what it was? Anybody want to take a guess? It was the divorce. Yeah. So many of you know, well, maybe you don't. I had a divorce when my daughter was like maybe 4 months, 3 months old. And the scariest thing that I went through during that time, the fear of losing my daughter. I made a pact to myself. And I struggle with this being raised in a Missouri Synod Christian upbringing. The word was always, in order to have a child, you were supposed to be married. Well, I did that at 42 years old. Oh, let me backtrack. I did that at like around 40 because I had my daughter when I was 42. And so I'm gonna paint the scene for you. And this final story is perhaps the most life-altering event that I have ever witnessed. And I hope it stumbles on some dads, some moms that are really going through this process. I spent most of that marriage working, right? Working. At that time, a teacher. So a minuscule income, paying for attorneys, paying for child support, and not knowing when I was going to be able to see my daughter because I couldn't breastfeed. That was the excuse. I think men get shafted in divorce. That's a whole new different tangent. And I'm going to just stick to the topic here. But the scariest moment that I had is the end of the marriage in itself. That was very scary. But the biggest thing, y'all, was not the thought of not being able to see my daughter and how vital dads are. Dads are so impactful, so important for the growth of a young girl or a boy. But for me, being a girl dad now, dads provide confidence. Dads are the first person that their little girl loves. So they're the first person that they're the first person they're ever going to witness is their dad. And their dad is going to be responsible for who they date. Or are they going to chase boys at a young age? And if they're chasing boys at a young age, man, y'all dads, y'all failed. What are you going to do to change it? Scariest moment. And there were moments of deep fear, y'all. I just felt like I was going to miss out on big life moments, milestones that I would have had a chance to witness. First opportunities of her walking. I'll never forget when I had that opportunity. My buddy, who was at the time my assistant coach, Baca, shout out to you, buddy. I remember coming home and he was over there for the day. I don't know why, but he was over. And I remember I had the shoebox and she walked for the very first time. And I was like, man, I got to see her walk. And I get emotional thinking about it because it was so beautiful and so precious. And I can remember distinctively that moment and that time. And, but what was really scary for me, y'all, is not knowing where I was going to have the money to do that. Not knowing, like, I'm pouring all this money because I wasn't going to give up. I am getting really emotional talking about it because I didn't want to give up. My real dad gave up on me. He never was around. My mom would attempt to find him, and then he'd have a job for a short period of time, and then he'd go to another job. So we never had any child support, alimony, nothing. I was all about doing that. I remember giving away $850, not seeing my daughter, paying for attorney costs, working to pay my daughter's mom. That's scary. That's fearful. And I shared this with another time is just the process of money, and just, it's scary. It's a scary moment. And the emotional impact that it had was that the fear that hit me in a way that no other experience had given me. Now, I've had some really dark moments in my life, and I share that in my story podcast. But this level of uncertainty, it really shook me to the core, y'all. Not knowing when I was going to see my daughter again. Not knowing where the money is going to come from. Going in debt because of it. The lessons and reflection on this, y'all, it showed me how deeply love and fear are connected. And how fear of losing someone you care so immensely about sometimes, oftentimes, more than your own self. And that can be one of the most overwhelming emotions that I have ever faced is a divorce. It's scary, it's uncertain, and you kind of even hear it in my voice and for those of you that are going through a divorce, and if you need some help, some guidance, I can help you weather that storm. And I often have clients tell me after they get done talking to me, thank you. Every time I get done talking to you, I feel so much better. I hope that today's podcast, the 6 scariest things of my life really somehow resonated with you and maybe paralleled you to another story in your life. And that story, how has that impacted you still today? And as I wrap this up today, y'all, these 6 moments, these 6 scary moments shape me in so many different ways, from my childhood fears of the boogeyman to the adult fear of losing my daughter. Fear is a powerful emotion. However, it's also a reminder of what we value most in life. And the takeaway today for you all, high achievers, if there's one thing that I've learned, is that facing fear head on, be the buffalo that goes directly into the storm, is the key to personal growth. Evaluating oneself. Could I have done better? What am I missing here? The moments that scare us often end up being the ones that teach us the most. Thank you for listening today. Thank you for joining me on my journey of the 6 most scariest moments of my life. And remember, it's okay to feel fear, y'all. However, don't let it control you. Embrace it. And if you don't know how to embrace it, my Live to Thrive program can help you understand it, can learn it, and can help you propel you to live with moving, purposeful, transformational, exciting life. Basically, to move forward and stop staying where you're at. Until next time, my friends, 1% better in mind, body, and soul. Stay flex. Let's go.